We're going to start with the Irish Examiner, and it's the front page of the Irish Examiner this morning here, who are leading with the fact that Conor Murray has been out in front of the media over the last few days. Munster star Murray slams claims that he fails drugs test is the lead on the very front page of the full Irish Examiner section this morning that we wanted to draw your attention to. Scrum half was out injured for nearly 5 months. Toughest part was the rumours that his family would hear, writes Stephen Rogers here, that I think we'd all heard them at the time, that he was out because he'd failed some sort of a drugs test, and obviously as it materialised it was nothing to do with that, more to do with the neck injury. There are other headlines in the front page of the Irish Examiner this morning that we're not going to necessarily get stuck into. On the sports section, it's the photograph that I think most rugby followers around the country didn't expect to see this morning. It's Chris Farrell. His miracle return boosts Munster's hopes at Kingsholm. Lucky 13, it writes, because it seemed as if he was expecting some sort of prolonged spell on the sidelines, but he does start for Munster against Gloucester this evening, so much more on that inside, including the thoughts of Ronan O'Gara, who says that he's not getting overly carried away with the sort of Munster might actually win the Champions Cup stuff.
No, and he's probably right to think that. I think a lot will be learned in the next fortnight, really. Without getting carried away here, when it comes to like rugby weekends in the season, this weekend really is up there in terms of the best ones. Like there's a lot of great Six Nations weekends when it really matters. Some of them failed to deliver, but this is I think he was Neil Francis this week described it as moving weekend in the Champions Cup, and it really is. This is where you kind of finally solidify whether or not you're going to qualify, and it's going to be just a cracking weekend of rugby starting from this evening, and then 4 hours of Irish provinces in action then tomorrow with Ulster and Leinster, and of course you can't forget Connacht as well. Just a brilliant weekend of rugby. Chris Farrell coming back so quickly is something which I think raised a lot of eyebrows here. I'm sure he's fully fit. There's always just a bit of a concern with somebody who's come back from such a previously long injury layoff, but if he is touch and go with such a pivotal match, especially away from home tonight, I can't really blame Munster for risking him. Now, I'm not saying it is a risk. Maybe he is fully fit and good to go and everything is overblown.
You suspect he probably is, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the... particularly in the eve of some pretty big international tournaments upcoming as well. So, we'll kind of see on that one. It's... just interesting to see some good stuff from Ronan O'Gara there about Toulouse as well. That game is this evening, which I am uber excited about. Like Friday night Champions Cup. Actually, I was just thinking about the one rival, and I'd mentioned it in that clip there, for the competitiveness of the Munster Championship. The Champions Cup pool stages.
Yeah, they're extremely tough.
Unbelievably tough.
Yeah, no, they are. And like if Munster lose tonight, for example, which is a possibility in Kingsholm of all places, you're looking at them and you're thinking, even if they lose narrowly, you couldn't really write that pool stage off as a complete disaster. But there's a high possibility that they won't qualify because they're in such a tough pool. Everybody in Munster's pool can still qualify, and when everybody can still qualify, that tends to be one of the pools where none of the best runners-up are going to come out of. So it's huge stakes tonight from a Munster perspective if they lose. And I'd agree with you for once that the pool stages of the Champions Cup are extremely tough to get out of. I was going to say it's tougher than the Munster Hurling Championship. They're close. They're close,
yeah. 2019 really has already brought some amazing things.
It has, you know. The age of the disagreement is over.
We still haven't found out what it is that you're so happy about, but we might get to that.
I was just saying I was happy, to be quite honest.
You were just having a taxi conversation.
I had to answer your question.
Munster can ride the storm if they keep their cool, writes Jerry Thornley on the sports section in the Irish Times this morning. This is obviously a preview of this game. Province ruffled in cast, but seem to have learned lesson to good effect. And a pretty good photograph there, Joey Carberry as well, hanging on to the shirt tails of Jason Woodward. So that is largely, obviously, rugby dominated the Irish Times this morning. The Times Ireland edition, meanwhile, is our next port of call here. Byrne steps in for Sexton. Ross Byrne is going to get the number 10 shirt. It seems for Leinster at the RDS tomorrow. And I mean, you know, it'll be interesting to see what impact it has on the Leinster game plan, apart from anything else. Like Johnny Sexton obviously just recently voted the best player on the planet. I think no matter what, and Stuart Lancaster was very effusive in his praise for Ross Byrne during the week about the qualities that he brings to it, but you think that no matter what, no matter who's stepping into that shirt, that you must have to alter your game plan, no matter who's coming in, because, you know, there's going to be a difference in quality. So
of course there is, and like no two players are the same stylistically either. And when it comes to the position of out half, of course you're going to have to alter your game. Like, I may or may not be predicting Leinster for the Champions Cup later on in our crystal ball section, and I did suspect after they'd gone to Toulouse and got beaten the last time that it's like, oh God, I fear for Toulouse when they come to Dublin in 2019. Now I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm worried for Leinster this weekend in terms of losing the game. In terms of potentially going out and getting that bonus point, I don't think it's a done thing whatsoever, and I'm sure most Leinster fans would agree with that. You just look at the injuries, like the Irish Times have it this morning, that Rob Kearney's going to be out. Obviously Henshaw and Sexton are out as well. James Lowe suspended. 4 big players out. Toner's possible doubt as well.
back in for them. It's
in fact, like with the probable team that the Irish Times have, that Toner's not actually starting in that team. I think it's Scott Fardy starting in the second row, according to the Irish Times, alongside James Ryan. So a little bit of a chipping away at that Leinster depth, which made them such convincing champions last year. But I think we've seen chinks in that armour already this year when it comes to depth, and it's to do with it's to do with Carberry going to Munster, it's to do with Ian Asewa leaving, and a couple of other factors as well.
Yeah.
That the aura of Leinster isn't as strong as it was last year.
And beating Leinster, turns out, was a real springboard for Toulouse as well. They've not lost one single game since that. I think won 11 of the 12 and drawn the other one. So they're a different prospect. And I'm not saying that Leinster were complacent over there, but
it's good to have Toulouse back as well.
Yeah. Murray centre stage after revealing hurt at rumours is the back page of the Irish Independent this morning. That's written on a lot of the. I'm laughing not at the headline, but at the fact that I was told that I'm not to discuss rugby any longer. And then there it is. Tommy, what can I do? It's on the back page of the Irish Independent today. And also a photograph of Marcus Rashford and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer ahead of United Tottenham on Sunday. A game that we're going to talk to Gary Breen about in just a little bit.
Back page of the Herald this morning says Rice close to making call. Decision soon from West Ham team on Irish future, and Solskjaer saying that they're going to go on the attack against Tottenham on Sunday. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail is an exclusive. A dare threat by Philip Quinn. Wentworth emerges as rival to McManus's Manor for Ryder Cup. So I think we were all under the impression that Adair Manor was almost a sure thing to host the Ryder Cup in 2026, but Wentworth has now emerged as a real contender to take the mantle as host course for the 2026 Ryder Cup. It hosted the Ryder Cup in 1926, so the whole play here is the 100th anniversary of the Wentworth Ryder Cup, and it might put them into a good position. The other story here in the back of the Irish Daily Mail, and it's carried in a lot of the other newspapers, is Kearns out of league after heart surgery. So Monaghan midfielder Niall Kearns will not feature in this year's Allianz Football League after it was revealed yesterday that he is recuperating from a heart operation. He obviously had a sensational year last year, brilliant in midfield for Monaghan. So he underwent cardiac surgery back in October, but the operation was kept under wraps. And Malachy O'Rourke has said Niall's had a heart operation, so he won't be seen until at least the end of the campaign. He's got a fair recovery period ahead of him. He had a problem with his heart last year, so we wish Niall Kearns all the best, and obviously a huge loss to Monaghan this year in the league. Hopefully we'll see him back and playing for the summer. Back page of the Sun is watch Poch. Ole says it's only right he's in the frame to boss Manchester United. The back page of the Mirror then leads with this Marko Arnautovic story. Arnie says I won't be back. West Ham star's agent and brother says Marko wants out of Hammers. Echoes of Dimitri Payet there for West Ham United fans, I'd imagine, this morning. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is D-Day. Rice ready to make call on international future. And then a couple of the UK...
That was a story that ran in one of the newspapers yesterday, that wasn't it? That he had given some quotes to say that everything was locked down now on the club front. And, it's all sorted now, so I'm ready to make my decision.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're all ready for him to make the decision too, aren't we? In a way that maybe we weren't as prepared for a few months ago, that, like, ultimately if he decides to go for England, screw it. It just, at least it's over.
Yeah, I would rather wait a year and him play for Ireland, though. Back page of The Guardian is the fairly dejected-looking Andy Murray. Down under, Andy Murray cuts a frustrated figure, and also study reveals dire situation. In-play betting causing havoc with younger football fans, writes David Conn. The front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section is Murray agony. Djokovic practice match flags up new concerns over Britain's fitness on eve of Australian Open. And the Racing Post then, front page here, 5-year bans for jockeys who failed tests for cocaine, says the front of the newspaper this morning. Irish authorities say message is not getting through. So they're going to face at least a 5-year ban from the sport, those Irish-based jockeys facing positive tests for cocaine. There was an announcement yesterday that Damien Melia, a £7 claiming apprentice, and Conor Murphy, a £7 claiming amateur, have been given 4- and 5-year suspensions by the IHRB after testing positive for metabolites of cocaine. The Racing Post understands a third rider has also tested positive for cocaine, but that case is yet to be heard.
There was a story also in the, might have been The Guardian actually there, if You have it, or do I have it? No, I have it here, sorry. It was in the Telegraph about John Hardy, who's a former, this was a story at the time that it really passed me by, former Edinburgh back row who had actually, oddly enough, not tested positive for cocaine because there'd never been a drugs test to fail. He'd been found to have been taking cocaine in an Edinburgh bar, and there was a disciplinary hearing. There was no test. It seems like he just came out and put his hands up and said, yeah, I was doing that, and then served a ban. He's now playing at Newcastle Falcons. An interview with him by Luke Edwards in the Telegraph today.
How long was the ban? I know I put you on the spot there. I haven't actually read the piece. It just strikes me from reading this that 4 or 5 year ban for what is often referred to as recreational is fairly steep, but then you kind of think of the process of being a jockey when it comes to weight cutting and all that sort of stuff. Perhaps it could be seen as a bit more than that.
I think it was a couple of years. He played for Scotland the 2015 World Cup, so it would have been post that. And he was in a bit of limbo, couldn't get a club, and is rocked up now at the Newcastle Falcons. And is, I don't know, look, I've read the piece this morning. It's like one of these things where he's obviously taken a significant toll on him. He wants to make amends. He wants to do his parents proud. All things that you definitely have empathy for and think that are, standout things to do. But he also says stuff like, that, the stories are reported on, it's tough for his family, it's been written about. He says, I know for my parents it's hard because whenever they read something in the paper, it's John Hardy ... something. It's around those lines. They don't like that, but like me, they've just got to accept it. Like, I'd almost flip that in his head and say, like, what the hell do you want people to write about you? Like, you were, put your hands up and come out. And it's not, that was nothing for, in his instance, taking cocaine was not, I'm assuming, performance enhancing. It was something that was recreational for him. But at the same time, there's an opportunity for him to come out in a slightly different way to somebody who might have taken something for performance enhancing reasons, but to do something educational for people, kids in the game, and like put himself out there and actually embrace the idea that this is something that happened to him and he got embroiled and he regrets it and he wants to make amends for it, as opposed to, please stop talking about it.
Yeah, it's true.
Which is essentially what he's saying.
The silence is never a good idea, I guess, in any subject.